The morning sun rose high over the Sea of Galilee, casting golden light on the gentle waves. Along the grassy slopes, a massive crowd of men, women, and children began to gather, drawn by whispers of Jesus' miraculous works and profound teachings. Families spread blankets, children played near their parents, and murmurs of anticipation filled the air. At the center of it all, Jesus sat among his disciples, teaching with compassion and wisdom. His words, like the sea breeze, flowed through the crowd, stirring hearts and drawing even more people to join. By midday, the crowd had swelled to over 5,000, stretching far beyond where the eye could see. As the sun began to dip lower, casting long shadows over the hills, the disciples started to exchange worried glances. People had been there all day, captivated by Jesus, but now their hunger was evident. Mothers cradled tired children, and the faint rumble of stomachs could be heard. Philip approached Jesus, his brow furrowed. "Master," he said, gesturing to the vast sea of people, "it would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each person to have even a bite." Andrew chimed in, pointing to a young boy standing nearby. "Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 fish, he said hesitantly, "but how far will they go among so many?" The boy clutched his basket tightly, shy but willing. His bread was small, his fish modestly sized, but he had seen the power of Jesus and wanted to help. Jesus smiled at the boy, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Bring them to me," he said. Turning to the disciples, he instructed them to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. As the crowd settled, Jesus stood, lifting the basket of loaves and fish in his hands. The sky above turned a soft shade of gold, and a hush fell over the crowd as Jesus looked up to heaven. He gave thanks, a prayer of gratitude and trust, and then began breaking the bread. Piece after piece, Jesus handed the food to the disciples to distribute. As they moved through the crowd, something extraordinary happened. The bread and fish never ran out. Each time they returned to Jesus, there was more to take. Families sat in circles, marveling as food reached them. Parents fed their children, elderly couples shared smiles, and friends passed baskets between one another. The aroma of freshly baked bread and roasted fish filled the air. One young girl laughed in delight as she took her first bite, her cheeks flushed with excitement. A father marveled at how, moments ago, they had nothing, and now they ate their fill. The disciples moved among the groups, their initial doubt replaced with awe. Each piece of bread they handed out felt like a holy act, a tangible sign of God's provision. As the meal ended, the crowd sat contented, the grassy slopes now quiet except for the sounds of satisfied conversation. Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." With baskets in hand, the disciples walked through the crowd, collecting fragments of bread and fish. To their astonishment, they filled 12 baskets, more than what they had started with. Peter held up his basket, shaking his head in wonder. 12 baskets, he murmured. "We doubted, and yet." John, beside him, nodded. "It's more than just food," he said. "It's a sign." As the crowd began to disperse, many turned to look back at Jesus, their hearts full. Conversations buzzed about the meaning of what they had witnessed. Could he be the prophet? One man asked. "He is more than that," a woman whispered, her hand on her child's shoulder. "He is the one we've been waiting for." Jesus, watching the people depart, spoke quietly to his disciples. "This is not just a meal. I am the bread of life. Those who come to me will never go hungry." As the sun set over the hills, the disciples gathered around Jesus. They had started the day with doubt, but now their faith felt renewed and alive. It wasn't just about feeding their bodies, was it? Andrew asked. Jesus smiled. No. It was about feeding their spirits, showing them that in the kingdom of God, there is always enough. The disciples nodded, the miracle etched into their hearts as a reminder of Jesus' divine power and compassion. For those who had witnessed it, the feeding of the 5,000 would remain a symbol of hope, provision, and the abundance found in faith.